In this video, we're going to discuss how to describe graphs using specific vocabulary, or in another case, it's called analyzing a graph. So we want to use either the following vocabulary. We want to use domain, range, function, vertical line test, zeros, and then either discrete or continuous graph. So we have to decide if it's a discrete or continuous graph based on this coordinate, this function we have graphed here below. So let's start there. So discrete means it's just a bunch of individual points. It looks to me like it's not a bunch of individual points and they're connected. So I would say this graph, this is a continuous graph. If I can spell continuous, we would be better. Continuous graph. Because you have to state why it's a continuous graph. Because it has connected lines / curves. It doesn't really have any curves, but what you're trying to do in this situation is describe this entire graph, and you're trying to help somebody that has no clue about this graph understand what these words mean and how to apply it to this graph. So you have to have a really good understanding of this graph and these vocabulary words in order to do this. All right, so we got that. We can cross that off our list. We did that part. So now we're going to talk about the domain. So the domain is, well, it goes up forever in both directions. So the domain is all real numbers because it's going to cover this entire x-axis forever. Like, I can't go any further, but it's going to cover the entire x-axis forever. So my domain is all real numbers. Because the graph extends or goes all the way across the coordinate plane from left to right, because domain is what kind of values? X values. So left and right, that's why I highlighted left to right in this case, because it's the x-axis. All right, so we have talked about domain. Now we need to talk about range. So the range is let's talk about it. Range is y values. Let's use a different color. Range is y values. So it stops right here. So everything is greater than or equal to -3. So my range is y is greater than or equal to -3 because the minimum value, which means the lowest point on the graph, the minimum value has a y value of -3. If the minimum value was -4, then our range would be y is greater than or equal to -4, but in this case it's -3. All right, so we've done range. Now we're going to talk about function. Is this thing a function? Well, it has to pass what to be a function? What kind of test does it have to pass? Think about that for a second. The vertical line test. So it passes the vertical line test, so it is a function. This is a function because it passes the vertical line test. So I just crossed off two of my vocab words I wanted to use, function and vertical line test. All right, now I have one more thing to do. I am going to erase this for now, just so we can talk and I don't have too much going on in my graph. So I want to find what? I want to find my zeros, which we just talked about in the last video. So the zeros of this graph are, remind me what zeros are again? Where it crosses the x-axis. So, right there and right there. So my zeros are x equals -1 and 2. Since you have to explain to them why they're zeros. You're pretending like this person has no clue anything about these words, and you have to teach them that you understand them. Since that is where the graph intersects or crosses the x-axis. So we have now used all of our vocabulary words, and we have written a nice little description of this graph.